welcome back to Breakfast on GB News. Time to go through the papers. Joining us again in the studio, broadcaster Liz Kershaw and author James Bloodworth. Thank you both very much. Liz, let's start with you and the front page of the FT this morning. Tory leadership contest. We've got weeks left to go, but there's still news lines out there.
Yeah, this is an article on the front page of the Financial Times, and it's suggesting there's a bigger spread on it inside, more analysis, that in the leadership contest, there's not enough talk about levelling up. You know, what's happened to the big policy of the Tory government, the signature issue, levelling up. They've both mentioned it, Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss, in the debates and in interviews that I've seen. Liz Truss brought in years in Leeds, the high school years, a few of them.
She was there for a couple of years.
Yeah, and said, which she's now been, using it to dig up everything, don't it? Oh, what's she moaning about? Great school, she went to Oxford from there, yes. But I think what she was saying is what I would say about my comprehensive school, that you got a cross-section of the whole of society, and going from a private school, primary school, to a comprehensive school, I really got a social education, which I'm grateful for. Anyway, we digress. So they have both mentioned it. Rishi Sunak cited his growing up in Southampton. What brought levelling up home to me recently, and it was quite heartbreaking, was that I went to Runswick Bay in North Yorkshire. That was not heartbreaking, that was fantastic. And it's all, second homes and middle class people on the beach. And we had to take one of our party up further north to get a train home earlier than us. I won't mention the place because I don't want to shame people, upset the people who live there. I'm not snooty, but the contrast.
Yeah.
And it was just so depressing. It wasn't even a miserable day. It was a lovely sunny day, but there were boarded up shops, the seafront was run down, the station was all boarded up, and it's just a couple of platforms and a bus shelter. What was worse is there were like gangs of teenagers standing on street corners chatting. I thought, there's nothing for them to do. Can you imagine going up there? There's places where you come from in Cumbria that are like that. My hometown, Rochdale, there's nothing to do. There is no aspiration, because if I were 14 there now, I would be thinking, what's on the cards for me? How do I don't have contacts. I can't get an internship at some fancy London media firm or advertising. What is the prospect? And we went through one smaller town that used to be a mining town to get there, and that's like a strip, and the shops and closed down. And I thought, fancy growing up here, something needs to be done. Now, Rishi Sunak...
Is there a sense, though, it's got to go on the back burner a little bit?
I think
purely because of everything...
The economic problem.
Yeah, because, following the referendum of 2016, there was this new interest in, left-behind communities, typically former industrial towns where manufacturing and things had left. And the levelling up agenda came on the back of that, this new interest in the working class, if you like. I think as the referendum recedes into the past, it will be easier for politicians to kind of start ignoring that issue again, and the levelling up agenda to kind of fall by the wayside.
But do you think part of it is about who Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss are currently trying to appeal to?
Perhaps, yeah. The Tory grassroots are not representative of the country. The average age is, I think, 70, and it tends to be wealthier individuals. So yeah, perhaps, but I do think there's less interest in those communities that levelling up would benefit as we get further away from the 2016 referendum.
Well, I'm a member of the Conservative Party, and I'm 64 on Saturday. I'm quite well off, but I still care, so I don't think we can generalise on that. But I've been talking about this for years, because looking around Rochdale, when I was about to do my A-levels, and all the mills were closing, and, we've had all the associated social problems with Rochdale since, which are well publicised now. So it stems from the fact that the jobs that went have not been replaced, and this is something that it's not just about, it is about building new roads and new railway lines and spending money on revitalising town centres, but we need to create meaningful, well-paid jobs, not in warehouses, James an expert on Amazon, but skilled, well-paid jobs, people can hold their heads. Like, I was walking around Whitby during this holiday, and a guy approached me, and he had been a steel worker in Middlesbrough Teesside, and he was saying, will you buy one of these? And there were pamphlets with jokes in that he'd made up. I just thought,
Oh yeah,
I admired the guy, and I just thought, this is so sad. But why hasn't this guy got a real breadwinner's job doing something meaningful?
Shall we look to some more international news? Front page of the Daily Telegraph, James, is posing a very scary question.
Yeah, I mean, this is more doom and gloom, if you like. So there's the risk of an accidental nuclear confrontation with China and also Russia is an increased risk because the channels of communication that existed during the Cold War are not there anymore with those countries. So I mean, the Cold War is often characterized as this, as a standoff between East and West, where we lived with this kind of fear of nuclear confrontation. But what's being said here by the security chief is that it was actually easier to understand in some ways the other side during the Cold War because there were these channels of dialogue between the nations. But now there aren't those channels between China, and the West, and between Russia and the West. And also China appears to be increasing its nuclear warheads. So I mean, I find it quite absurd reading some of these figures. So Russia has 6,000 nuclear warheads, America has 5,600 nuclear warheads, China has 350. And just a few, each one of these could destroy an entire city. So I mean, a miscalculation on the part of one side could lead to escalation, which could lead to basically apocalypse. So I mean, this is the world is becoming scarier, and this is an example of it.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Isn't it, Johnson?
I'm sorry to
Well,
bear this bad news.
It's like growing up back in the 80s.
Yeah.
Isn't it? All that, where you really thought it could all happen.
Two tribes.
Oh,
that
yeah.
repertoire, when if you hear the alarm,
Yeah.
get in your shelter. And it was written, and that book, When the Wind Blows, about the old couple clinging to each other.
And the film Threads as well.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen that? It kind of depicts what would happen in the UK in the event of a nuclear war. It's absolutely terrifying.
Well, in the meantime, Liz, we've got the potential of, according to the Eye, I haven't heard this from since the 80s really either, a general strike.
Yeah. Well, that's is possibly on the cards, according to a few of the papers. Pick the Eye. When they say general strike, it will be generally public sector workers who have got strong unions, and I believe in strong unions. But it's not going to be people flipping burgers and frying chips in McDonald's on a minimum wage. It's not going to be people in warehouses on 0 hours contracts. They're the people who aren't going to be able to get to work and are going to lose out as well. So it's not going to be like the general strike of 1922 when tens of thousands of miners before the coal board was, before the coal industry was nationalised, went on strike, marched to London from the northeast. But yeah, I think there are going to be strikes. I wish we could just all pull together. But meanwhile, I just want to ask a question before I go on today. What is the Labour Party for? Because the Labour Party was created by the trades unions, the labour movement, and it's supposed to represent people who labour in order to put food on the table rather than those who own capital. And Keir Starmer yesterday sacked an MP who had been a union rep because he stood on the picket line shoulder to shoulder with the workers. I just don't understand how those two things can be reconciled.
Well, I mean, I think there is a case for Keir Starmer sacking his Transport Secretary, not because he went on the picket line, because I think Labour should have supported the strikes, but I think for breaking shadow cabinet unity, because if there is a position the shadow cabinet has that people should not be on the picket lines, and then one person does that, then I think Keir Starmer has to show that he's the leader and enforce that discipline on the shadow cabinet. I don't agree with the policy, but I understand why he's removed Sam Tarry, who was the MP, from his front bench. I think with the strikes generally, I think I don't think people are striking because they want to go on strike. I think they're striking because they can't pay their energy bills, they can't feed their families. And I think it's a great shame that we don't have stronger trade unions in sectors like Amazon or the fast food industry, so workers can actually, take a stand there. But it's incredibly hard to organise in those industries. So at Amazon, for example, you've had union reps in the GMB trying to hand out forms in the car park and then get chased off by security in the police school. So it's not easy to actually organise in those sectors.
Yeah. Let's finish off with just something, just very, very briefly, something a little bit lighter, which is J-Lo stripping off in the song.
Yeah, I just put this in a sensitive issue for me. I keep, it pays to advertise, so I keep mentioning it's my birthday. I like to make a week of it on Saturday. And it's just about ageism, really. It's actually written by Ulrika Johnson, who I can do without her posing naked in the sun at least once a week. But it's a question of whether people like Jennifer Lopez and Gwyneth Paltrow, candles aside, don't want one, should be posing nude
At 53.
at their age. Well, if you can have a beautiful body at 53, you can have a rubbish body that you don't look after at 23. Now, if they want to show off how they look after themselves and keep healthy, the fundamental issue here is that women over a certain age, i.e. post-menopausal, aren't supposed to have any sexuality at all. That's it, girls. Pack up, you've had your day. Put your cardi on.
Yeah.
And it's wrong. And I'm glad women like that are making a stance.
As long as they're not Photoshopped.
Oh no, I don't agree with that.
Realistic.
Yeah. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm all for it. I mean, I just think if it's their choice and it's then it's great.
Yeah.
But it's got to be down to people's choice, not for voyeurism or anything like that, but just to say if they want to show what they look like.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's really forcing J-Lo, are they?
No, I think why not?
Well, you get what I mean about the age.
Well, no one bats an eyelid at Tom Cruise whipping his top off at 60 odd in Top Gun 2, do they?
No.
No, I think we do live in a youth-obsessed culture, so I think fair enough. I don't see the problem with it at all.
Yeah.
What about Charles Dance coming out to the Med with just his shorts from the sea last year? 70 odd, he looked
Did he?
fantastic.
Did they?
Yeah.
See that one? Oh, I don't know.
Liz.
I've blanked it out.
Thank you, James. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
It's been a pleasure for joining us this morning on Breakfast.
Excuse me, that's
You're
shocking.
going to need your singing voice in a second.
Oh, yes.